I've just read a scary story that has given me goosebumps. I've been reading your submissions of scary stories, and one has just jumped off the page and has terrified me for the night. So this story has been sent in by someone called Camilla. I hope I've pronounced your name right. She's from Lebanon, and this particular event happened around 25 years ago when she moved over from Lebanon to start her university career. Camilla also tells me that she was brought up in quite a educated Muslim household where paranormal events weren't part of their worldview. They were always taught to be rational minded and everything could be explained. This is why this situation doesn't make sense, to her at least. So this happened on the first night that she arrived in London. She'd rented an apartment for a month. It was in Russell Court. It was a very oldie-worldy apartment, very normal for London. She said she kind of liked it though because she was very inspired by Jane Austen, wooden beams, wonky corridors. It was just an old apartment. She was quite tired from travelling and she thought she was just going to wind down for the evening, not even bother unpacking, just chill out, get her pyjamas on, get in bed, start the day fresh the next day. Just as she was winding down, she heard what she thought someone say, "Hi, Camilla." She said the moment she heard that, her heart just stopped. Her eyes opened and she was like, shit, someone's in the apartment. But then she heard it again, more of a whisper this time. I've just had goosebumps go all over my body after saying that. Oh my God. She said she heard her name again, clear as day, Camilla. Just her name whispered to her directly in her ear. She was terrified, but she was brought up on rational thinking. She thought, shit, someone's in the apartment. So she got up, ran straight to the corridor. No one was there. It was empty. But when she goes back into that bedroom, she sees someone. She said standing next to her bed was a young, thin man dressed in what she described as old world clothes. She said she started to recite like verses of the Quran in her head because what she was seeing, like it couldn't be real. This person spoke to her. He said, "I'm sorry for bothering you. I just had to make sure that you could see us." He gave her a little wave and then he walked off through the wall. We've got a ghost, people. We've got somebody that has seen a ghost. Camilla said that she just stood there, frozen, not even knowing if what she saw was real. She thought, do I call the landlord saying someone's broke in? But then she realised how crazy she's going to sound when they say, yeah, he walked through the wall. Luckily, nothing else happened in that apartment. Nothing else has happened so far to Camilla. But she recalls on something. The figure said to her, "I'm surprised that you could see us." And she thought, who is us? Throughout the years, she's tried to get answers. She spoke to an imam, priests, no one can explain anything. And then she recalls a conversation that she had with her own mother, something that made her think about this figure. Mum was just telling her about how she was as a child, things that she used to do. And then she told her that she used to speak to people that weren't there. I don't know why I choose to read these scary stories just as I'm about to settle into bed, but I hope I get a good night's sleep tonight. If you've got a scary story, scary experience that you want to share, please email me and DM me. I'm looking for the scary ones.
What would you do if you were a kid and saw something so terrifying, but as you gotten older, you continue to see it? I was sent another story about the Appalachian Mountains, and I thought it perfect to read it to you guys. So grab your favorite tea and settle in, and let me tell you another scary story that happened in Appalachia. Because, of course, this is Tea After Midnight. I've been stuck on this pomegranate tea from Aldi. It is just so good. This story comes from Joyce. Hi, Savannah. My name is Joyce, and I have a terrifying story that will leave you shivering by the end. I also hope you make a TikTok from this and share my story. When I was younger, I always felt connected to the other side, if you know what I mean. One day when I was 10 years old, my best friend and I at the time were having fun playing in my attic. Keep in mind, I used to live right by a big chunk of creaky forest where a whole lot used to happen and ancient stories were told to us growing up. I lived right in the middle of the Appalachian Mountains, and I knew the rules we had growing up about these mountains. As I was saying, my best friend and I were having fun in my attic. My attic was pretty big with a lot of hiding spaces, and her and I decided to play hide and seek. She was the seeker and I was the hider. Since I lived there, I knew all of the good places and went running to hide. I went up to a little corner where I knew there was a small latch that could open up a space in the floor. I looked for the latch, and when I found it, I pulled as hard as I could, and when I finally cracked it open, I jumped in without a second thought. It was dark and dusty. You couldn't see anything but the small cracks in the floorboard above. I crouched down as small as I could, not making a sound, and after a few minutes of hearing her run around trying to find me, the latch door opens and I think she found me. I stand up and say, "Aw, you found me." And then when I look up, there was no one there. Growing up, a lot of this stuff happened, so I just brushed it off quickly. After we were done playing hide and seek, we decided to sneak out into the woods through my backyard that had a narrow path leading to the woods. Her and I snuck out and started playing, climbing in the trees and making stuff with wood and leaves. My friend went looking for more sticks, while I stayed back making a small hut until I heard a branch crack in the distance. I turned around and found nothing. I thought it was just an animal, but boy was I wrong. After a few seconds, I heard another crack, and then another, and then another, inching closer to me. I was so scared. I decided to hide in our half-made hut when all of a sudden I hear frantic footsteps. I look up and saw my best friend running for her life, dropping her sticks, and when I looked behind her, I saw a big shadowy creature on all fours with big black horns. And exactly when I turned to look at it, its head turned to me, and when I tell you the fear I had when I saw its face. It was a shadowy face with a smile that grew bigger and bigger, wide and ripped like someone sliced their mouth, with eyes that looked at me with a sense of hunger. They were bloody and massive and droopy. After a few seconds, it disappeared. My friend and I went running, crying back to my house. We ran in the house and slammed the door closed. We thought we were safe, but no. We were crumpled up in a blanket on the couch, scared, and then I heard a thump on the glass. I looked to the side, and there it was again. Standing on two legs and its height well over 7 foot, it quickly disappeared. Later that night I went to bed, and the next morning when I came down, I looked at the window where I saw the thing the day before, and see 2 massive handprints that were bigger than my head. My mom inspects the handprints and they were dented into the glass. No matter how much scrubbing you do, they would not go. After this experience, I got sleep paralysis and see shadowy figures on a daily basis. 10 years later, when I was about 21, I was at a music festival having fun and letting loose. The music festival was not far from a graveyard. Middle of the night, when we were drinking, having fun, I saw something in the crowd that was unmissable. It was the same creature, with the smile and droopy eyes on all fours. Staring at me, eyes widened to the max. After that day, I always have this eerie feeling that something is with me wherever I go. And I always think, maybe it's that creature. So like I was saying, what would you do if you saw something so terrifying as a kid, and when you grew up, 10 years later, you see the exact same thing at a music festival of all places? That is so creepy, and honestly, I wouldn't know what I would do. I do know that I would be absolutely terrified out of my mind. Joyce, I just want to say that I'm so sorry that you saw that not only once but twice. Also saw the handprints dented into the glass. That freaks me out the most, I think. That it left a dent in the glass. I don't even know how that's physically possible, but it's terrifying to think of. But that does conclude this episode of Tea After Midnight. If you have any personal scary stories you want to share, I would love to hear them. And it doesn't have to be about the Appalachian Mountains. It can be about any experience you've had. You can email me at this email on the screen or the email in the caption of this video. Of course, as always, I love you so much. Thank you for watching. I hope you have the best night, and I'll catch you in the next one. Bye.
This girl emailed me and said that there was a demon that was trying to steal her baby while she was pregnant and afterwards, and she ended up seeing what this thing looked like. We're going to call this girl Sadie for the story. Now, I'm going to preface this by saying that she thought that this was pregnancy psychosis until other people saw this too. So Sadie lives in Australia, and she's experienced a lot of things, but this is the only time that she's ever experienced anything face to face. So a little background, she lived in a house with her sister and her sister's boyfriends, and a lot of them would experience things that were very uncomfortable. Like they would have sleep paralysis, or they would see things watching them at night. And she had also heard stories about pregnant women seeing entities and then having miscarriages a short time after seeing them. Sadie's dog always slept with her in her room because it made her feel more comfortable and relaxed knowing that she had a protector. I'm the same way, I get that. Now, it's important to note that she had a walk-in closet, and it was directly at the end of her bed, and it did not have a door on it. So you could see straight into the closet. One night she's up, it's around 3 a.m., she can't fall asleep, and she's just scrolling on her phone when she hears something coming from her walk-in closet. It sounded like something dropped on the floor. Now, she didn't really think anything of this because she thought that it was just her dog. So she's laying there for a second, and then she rolls over and she realizes that her dog is right next to her. She's like, okay, that's a little weird, but remember, now she's facing the closet. So she looks into the closet out of curiosity, and what she saw horrified her. Something was staring back at her from her closet. It was sitting at the top of her closet. She said this thing did not look human. It had big, round, giant eyes. She said that it had this huge smile on its face, and its teeth were long and sharp, and its skin was pale and wrinkled. She is absolutely frozen in fear, and she is making direct eye contact with this thing for about 30 seconds until finally she just adrenaline through her body, throws her up, and she just runs over to the light and turns it on. She looks back into the closet and there's nothing there. Now again, she's pregnant at this time, so she's thinking that she's seeing things, and she thinks that it may be pregnancy psychosis, and especially because she had turned on the light and it just disappeared, so she's kind of trying to rationalize it in her head. Unfortunately though, this would be the beginning of something that would come into her room every single night, but not in the same form. She said sometimes she would look up and she would see this thing in her closet and his eyes would glow red, and other times she couldn't see it at all, but she knew it was sitting in her closet. Other times she could see it in her bathroom that was connected to her bedroom. She started developing a fear of the dark. She would sleep with the bedroom light on most nights because she could not handle this. She also would keep the walk-in closet light on every single night because of what she was seeing, but she would have to replace this light every single week because the light bulb would blow out. She's going on for a while seeing this thing until suddenly it just stops. She doesn't see it anymore. And she at this point is heavily pregnant. She thinks this is over. And again, she's thinking in her head, this must have been pregnancy psychosis. What else could it have been? There's no way I was seeing this thing. There's no way. She ends up giving birth to a beautiful, healthy baby girl, and she brings her home from the hospital, and she obviously cannot sleep with the lights on anymore because the baby is in the bassinet next to her bed, and babies have to have the lights off to sleep. She also started putting her dog outside of her bedroom door to sleep. Well, one night when her baby was about 2 weeks old, she hears the dog outside of the door, and the dog is just scratching on the bedroom door, and she's quietly trying to tell the dog to stop it because it's going to wake up the baby, right? So she's kind of like, stop it, stop. And it won't stop. And then it starts whining and it's scratching harder. So finally she's like, you know what, fine, I'll let you in. So she gets up and she quietly walks over to the door, and she opens up the door really slowly. She lets the dog in, and then she slowly shuts the door. And then she sees something in the corner of her eye inside the closet. She said this time it was extra horrifying because this time it was standing up right in front of her, and this thing was like 7 feet tall. Remember, normally it was sitting on top of like her dresser inside of her closet. It was at this point that she knew that it wasn't just there to torment her, it wanted her baby. She could feel it inside of her. So her first instinct again is she's right by the light. She just turns it on again and it's gone. It's not there anymore. Well, this really scared her, right? Because she's not pregnant anymore. So she calls one of her friends and she asks them to please sage her closet, and they do. They come over and they sage the closet. Well, this was a huge mistake, and I'm just gonna weigh in here a little bit. I agree. Don't sage. She said that she felt like whatever this was, instead of getting rid of it, just angered it, because that night was the worst night. So that night she gets in bed, she puts her baby in the bassinet, she's trying to fall asleep. Suddenly she hears something. She hears, Sadie. She said that it sounded far away and quiet, but she was so terrified she just swung her head around, and standing right there at the end of her bed, right in front of her, was this thing towering over her, just standing there, smiling at her with those teeth and those eyes. Well, this tipped her over the edge. So the next day she tells her mom about it, and she's like, I cannot take this anymore. Something is going on in my house. And her mom goes, just tell it to leave. And she's like, what do you mean, just tell it to leave? She said that she even laughed at this. She's like, what? I tell it to leave? You think it's just gonna leave? And she's like, yes, I do. Tell it to leave. So she does not think this is going to work, but she will try anything at this point. So later on that night, the same thing happens, except for this time she says, leave my house now. You cannot have my baby. You are not welcome here. And then she starts to pray out loud. And then this thing that was originally standing at her bed slowly starts to back away into the closet. And it's just watching her as it's backing away. So she gets up again and she runs over to the light, because the light has been the only thing that has made this thing go away so far. So she gets up, she goes and she turns on the light. And at this point, she is crying. She has had it with this. She is so scared. And the thing is gone again. She said that the next day she went through her entire room and she threw away any possible thing that she thought this thing could have possibly attached itself to. And then she also moved. She actually moved because of this. She said that thankfully she has never experienced anything like this since, and that she hopes that she never does again, because this was a nightmare for her. So what did you guys think about that story? That's terrifying. I'm sorry, but like, I know what it's like to have something happen to you and you like be like, you cannot believe what you're hearing or seeing. Like, it just isn't registering because it's so insane, and not feeling like anyone would believe you if you told them, and then also just not believing yourself, like actually thinking that you are insane. I actually went and saw a neurologist once because I was hearing things that were crazy, and the neurologist was like, you just have anxiety. And I'm like, bitch, I don't just have anxiety. I'm full-blown hearing people talk to me. Like, I thought maybe I was schizophrenic. I really did. And because I'm in recovery, maybe it was schmug-induced. Like, I don't know. But I ended up not having that. And so I know what it's like to be that scared and be that horrified, and also just not understanding that that things like this are real. So I absolutely believe you. And I don't think this was pregnancy psychosis. And I'm glad that you were validated by other people seeing it. I'm sorry for the other people that saw it, but terrifying. So what did you guys think of the story? Like, do you think this was some type of psychosis or pregnancy psychosis? Or like, what are your opinions on it? Or do you think that she was really seeing something? And do you think that this was coming for the baby? Or do you think it was coming for her? I can't really think of any other questions right now, but drop any thoughts, opinions, suggestions that you have down in the comments, but please, as always, be respectful. Now we're going to do my favorite part, which is the shout out. Sandre_Nivol, thank you so much for the comment that you left. It was so sweet. The whole entire comment was so sweet. I really love that you love my stories. That makes me feel so good. I appreciate that you watch them and that you support me. Thank you for leaving that comment, and thank you for being a part of my community, and thank you for supporting me, and thank you for being kind. You have no idea what it means to me to have you here, and I hope you know how much I appreciate you as an individual. I love you. My dogs keep farting and it smells so bad. Annie XO or Anexo, I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. You'll be tagged. Thank you so much for what you said. That was also so sweet. I love a girl's girl, I swear. Thank you so much, both of you, because sometimes girls can be really mean to other girls, and so when women are nice to other women, it just shows the amount of confidence that you have, and I respect it so much. So thank you so much for what you said. Thank you for the support that you have given me. Thank you for being a part of my community and watching my stories and being kind and leaving comments. You have no idea what that means to me. Thank you so much for being here. I hope you know how much I appreciate you as an individual. I love you, girl. And my stories have been so long, I've had no time for the outros. Keep sending me your scary stories. I love you. Have a spooky night.
Screams and coughing are heard in the fog. Gloss on so I can run this mouth. Now focus. Scary story time. Fright Night Files. You asked about Poveglia Island. I will tell you because that place, woo, is scary. Lock in because this is long, but it's worth it. First up, back in the 1300s, the Black Plague was all over Europe. Venice is immediately like, oh no, we got to do something to stop this. So they look across the water and they can literally see just like right there an island that they weren't using, that they owned. And they said, well, what about that place? And other guys like, oh, good idea. Let's take all of the Black Plague victims and send them over there, out of sight, out of mind. The problem was they were like going around just getting whoever. So if you coughed, sneezed, if you were pale that day, or if you had a headache or whatever, they're like, we can't risk it. Get on the boat. You weren't allowed to say bye, kiss my behind in, nothing. You just got on there and went across. As you're coming in, you see these big pillars of like flames and stuff. Who was that? Your neighbor, your cousin. 160,000 people were thrown into these pits to try to get rid of the Black Plague. They say that the smoke was so thick that it collected on your tongue. Okay, out of sight, out of mind, until they're standing, along the water and they see the fog rolling in. They're like, ooh, majestic, how romantic, until that fog hit them right in the face with the smell of death, coughing, and screaming was in the fog. They've got that plague under control, and then now it's 1920. One guy's looking over at the island. He's like, ugh, we were kind of rough to the people over there. How can we keep the ball rolling? I know, let's do like an insane asylum. Out of sight, out of mind, the whole thing. We know how they did people. They would just put whoever was a burden or a problem or whatever. So if you were a wife that ran your mouth or like to read or whatever, all the things I do, I would have been thrown on that boat. Your husband comes home from work one day. He's like, hey, where's my spaghetti? And you're like, oh, sorry, honey. This book's really good. I was just like really like deep in this book. He'd have been like, we don't read in this house, Miss Ma'am. You didn't cook for me. Go get in the boat. You're going for a little ride. So they get over there immediately. Those patients, which are people that really probably shouldn't have even been there, start hearing screams and crying. Yeah, because 160,000 people died there during the Black Plague, and then they buried them all there. So many so that the dirt just became human remains, by the way. Yuck. All the big burly orderlies that worked there did not believe anyone that was saying like, hey, I can hear a ghost coughing in the corner of my room. They were like, you're just an emotional woman, zip it. Let me introduce you to Dr. Lazaro. Now, from what I've read and what I've been told, they don't really even know what his name was anymore. They just know he was a doctor that was unhinged, and he liked to do lobotomies, and he liked to do them with rusty tools. That was like his thing, to push the body as far as you possibly could before it would just, completely just shut down. While all of this is going on, the orderlies and the nurses start hearing crying and stuff. And they're like, hey, do you hear that? He's like, yeah, I hear that too. There's no one out there. Then they realize like, oh, maybe this place is haunted. All of the time that this is happening, Dr. Lazaro's just getting worse and worse until one night, everything goes quiet. All the patients are quiet. It's like this really strange quiet. And then they hear the bell tower go off. They go out there to see what's going on, and they see lab coat flapping in the wind. He's up on the top of it, walking around, muttering something. Next thing you know, so the first nurse that gets to him, she faints. Now, she's been seeing rusty tooled lobotomies about all day, every day, but the look on his face, the terror on his face, stretched mouth, eyes wide, lying on the rocks, made her faint. And then they were like, maybe it's time to wrap this up. Let's not have this here anymore. If the fog halitosis wasn't enough, they started noticing that when they were on boats and they were fishing, they were pulling in body parts, but that kind of like freaked them out. Then they drive past the dock and they see what looks like a bird / Batman. You see a black cape flapping in the wind, and then they realize it's a plague doctor. Now the government's like, hey, maybe we shouldn't go over there. So no one goes over there, and you still hear the bell ringing even though the tower's there, but the bell's not. Yeah, you can go if you get permission, but why would you want to? But yeah, that's Pavaglia Island.
Another very quick, spooky bedtime story for y'all. This one is called The Man at the Door, and it was submitted by someone named Jen. And Jen says when she was little, she was spending the night at her grandparents' house, and her grandparents had just remodeled their metal bedroom because they had some family coming to town, and they were staying for a while from England. And because Jen was a kid, she was very excited about this new bedroom, and her grandma's like, oh, do you want to sleep in here tonight? It'll be fun. We'll have like a girls' sleepover. And Jen's like, yeah, of course. And because the family had some animals that were sort of escape artists, they could open doors. I understand what that's like. My dogs and cat can also open doors. Installed a little latch on the inside of the bedroom door, and before they went to bed that night, the grandma latched the door so the animals couldn't break in. And goes to sleep, cozied up next to her grandmother. She's very relaxed. She's very happy, having the time of her life, right? In the middle of the night, though, she wakes up to a light knock on the door. Goes to the door and opens it ever so slightly, just enough that the latch would allow. I'm pretty sure I know exactly what type of latch she's talking about. It's got like a little hook that goes into a ring. It allows the door to give just a little bit. So she looks through the crack and she sees a man standing there. Night light down the hall illuminated his face just a little bit. She thought he wasn't very tall and she didn't recognize him, and he was quietly whispering, open the door, open the door. She's half asleep, but she says, Uncle Michael, because her uncle lived there too, and he says, yes, open the door. But she says she squinted her eyes and she could make out that it was not Uncle Michael, and she goes, no, he's taller. She goes, Pop Pop, who's the only other man in the house? And he says, yes, open the door. Because she knew at that point that something was not right because this man had just claimed to be both her uncle and her Pop Pop. She walks over to her grandmother who's sleeping in the bed and she says, Grandma, someone's trying to get in the room. She says, you need to wake up. He's standing right there. But her grandmother is asleep. She says, you're just dreaming. Go back to sleep. There's nobody at the door. She looks back at the door and can see the man peeking at her through the crack. She was scared, so she just got back into bed and hid under the covers and watched this man watch her. A few more times he tried to lure her out of the bed, whispering, open the door, but she rolled over and tried to ignore him. And after a few minutes, she heard him walk away from the door down the hallway toward the front door. Eventually, she heard the front door open and close. The next morning, she asked both her Uncle Michael and her Pop-Pop if it had been them, and both of them said that it wasn't. She told them that she thought somebody was in the house and had left, but they assured her that there wasn't because the door had been locked from the inside. Also pointed out to her that if someone really wanted to get into the room, it would not have been hard for an adult man to reach his finger in and pop the latch. She says, I was a child. I remember this vividly, though. I know it happened. And she says it still gives her the creeps to this day. She truly believes someone was in the house. So what do you think he wanted? Why do you think he didn't enter the room? Why did he leave without doing anything worse? This is Spooky Scary Storytime, the series where we share listeners' allegedly true stories about the creepiest or most unsettling things that they've ever experienced. If you have a story, we'd love to hear it.
Someone who we're just going to call Danny sent us an email to tell us about her experience of having a stalker when she was 17 years old and the wild way that she figured out who it was. So the story starts when Danny is about 16 years old and she is living in East England in a village with her boyfriend who is the same age as her. So she's 16 at the time, boyfriend's 16. Boyfriend has an older brother who is actually 23. Danny and older brother end up becoming really close and older brother ends up inviting her to a Discord server. She said that Discord was super big at the time. So she's in this Discord server with her boyfriend's older brother and some of his friends. And she says that there's this one guy in there who we can just call Greg. Her and Greg actually end up hitting it off. They have a lot of the same interests and he kind of takes a liking to her. Now, the more that Danny starts to interact with Greg, she realizes something is off. She said, I can't quite put my finger on it. There is nothing about him outwardly or the way that he acts that would make you feel this way. It was just kind of the vibe that he gave off. And she said that she was very spiritual, so she always listened to her intuition and always listened when the universe was telling her things like this. So she had this best friend who we're just going to call Kay, and she said that her and Kay would always try to get a read on Greg. Like, what's going on, Greg? Like, what's the deal here? But nothing. They couldn't figure anything out. They, tried to put their heads together to figure out why is he so creepy? Nothing. He was a perfectly normal guy. Acted perfectly normal, did nothing. Remember, as I said before, at this time, Danny is 16 years old. This is her boyfriend's older brother's friend group. So Greg is 21. So she finds out that Greg actually has a thing for her. This makes her very uncomfortable. He's too old. She's 16 years old. He's 21. Gross. So she says she ends up distancing herself from Greg, the friend group, and the older brother. Danny told me that when she is 17 years old, her and her boyfriend do end up breaking up. So no longer together. She's not going to live with him in his village in East England anymore. She's going to move away and she's going to get her own flat. So she does. In the village that she's leaving, the only person that she's really so close with is her best friend, Kay. So she tells Kay and one other girlfriend where she's going. She does not tell anyone else where she's moving. She's 17 years old. She has her own flat. She's living by herself. She said that it wasn't like a big place. There were maybe 4 flats altogether. She said that she did talk to everyone who lived there except for one family who was not very talkative or friendly with her. But she said, I don't blame them for that because I was 17 and living on my own. They probably thought that I was like selling rugs or something. Shortly after she moves in, she says that she looks out the window one night and she realizes that there is this silver car that is sitting outside. And she's thinking, that's weird. I've never seen that here before. It's kind of small. Like, I feel like I would know if it was someone who lived near me. The windows were tinted. She could not see inside, but she just put it in her mind. That's strange. She says this silver car sits outside for about an hour and then just drives away. Said she didn't see this silver car every single night, but it was there pretty frequently and it would just sit outside and then leave. She also said that during this time she would get letters in the post and they would not have a return address, and they would range from love letters to threatening to I despise you, just a broad spectrum of emotion expressed in each one of these letters. And remember, Danny said always want to listen to her intuition. So she gets this really bad feeling. She's thinking, something's not right here. I really don't want to be by myself. So I'm going to call my best friend Kay and see if she'll come stay with me for a little while. Calls her, Kay agrees, she comes and stays. The first night that Kay is there, they're kind of sitting in the living room, they get ready, they go to bed. Danny's in bed, Kay goes off to bed, and next thing they know, there is someone banging on Danny's door. Mind you, it's the middle of the night, but someone wants in, and luckily Danny said Kay is there, so they're together. Danny says, I do not answer that door. Kay does not answer that door. Not happening. She did say in her email, I know. Why didn't I call the cops? She said, I have no excuse for not calling them other than I was a stupid teenager who really didn't think that they would do anything. They would think that I was being dramatic, and what would be the point? She says, I don't have a better excuse. For the next few days, everything is quiet. No one else bangs on the door. The car isn't sitting outside.
Then Danny and Kay decide we need to go to the grocery store. We need food. They head out for the day. They come back, and inside Danny's apartment, on her kitchen table, is a box of chocolates and her favorite flowers. Like, inside, on the table. And Danny and Kay find this extremely afraid, obviously. Danny says, you know what, I feel still comfortable with my boyfriend's older brother that I was so close with. He and I aren't cool, but he and, brother, cool. I'm gonna call him. So she calls him and says, hey, can you come and stay with me, because here's what's going on. He's, yeah, no problem. So he comes and stays. Danny and Kay take the bedrooms, and he takes the living room. Danny says, I know that he probably thinks that I am being dramatic. I don't care. I want someone there. First night that he is there, Danny goes to sleep. She says that she has a dream, and in this dream, she is actually the one who is sitting in the car outside of her flat, watching her through the windows. She's basically seeing herself through someone else's eyes. She says she can see herself clear as day. She's sitting in her living room, she's folding laundry, and she's watching The Big Bang Theory, but this person herself that she's looking through these eyes is intently watching her. She wakes up terrified, thinking, I need to call the police, and then she says, over what? A dream? So she doesn't call the authorities. A couple days later, she has another dream that she is once again the person inside of the silver car that sits out of her flat sometimes and just seemingly watches her. She guesses. She doesn't know what they're doing. But she has a dream. She's seeing through their eyes once again. They are watching her through her window, and then they start to drive away. She's living through this person's eyes. She says that they're driving away, and they lean over and they open the glove box. And what's inside the glove box is a giveaway as to what person is doing this to her, who is stalking her. Now, you remember Greg, who we had talked about before, the 21-year-old who was into her when she was 16. Well, they had gotten really close, like, over the time that they knew each other. And obviously he was into her, so he kind of, like, helped her with a lot of things. Like, he helped get her a job, helped her with this, helped her with that. So she had given him a bracelet as a gift, as like a, hey, thanks for helping me with this. So inside that glove box, when it was open, what she saw was that bracelet that she gave him, and then a picture of herself inside of the glove box. She wakes up that next morning, she runs into the living room, she tells her ex-boyfriend's older brother, I know exactly who is doing this. Greg is the one who is stalking me. He is sending me these creepy letters. He is sitting outside of my apartment. He's actually breaking in. Ex-boyfriend's older brother really doesn't seem super surprised. She says the expression on his face actually pisses her off, and he's just kind of like, well, that would explain why he hasn't really been, like, answering calls and stuff lately. Now, Danny said that she knew that Greg was into some shady shit, y'all. So she says the best way that I can go about making this stop is to just call in an anonymous tip about the shady shit that Greg is doing. So she does, and Greg does end up getting arrested for this, and he is put into jail. And when the cops search his car in the glove box, they find the bracelet that Danny had given him, as well as a picture of her. I think there was also a picture of her ex-boyfriend and Greg in the glove box as well. She says, reflecting back on this, she 100% wishes that she would have taken this more seriously and called for help. But she said, I was a teenager, I was dumb, so I didn't. She says she's glad that everything did work out the way that it did. She listened to her intuition that something was up, and then she credits the fact that she dreamed seeing through this person who was stalking her, like seeing through their eyes, that she was able to figure out who it was and make it stop, because once Greg was arrested, everything was done. Ugh, I hate that. Someone in your house, just like leaving stuff on your table, like, that's so scary. That's today's story, so let me know what you think about that. I was super sick for the past 3 days, so thanks for hanging in there with me. I'm back. I'm good. I'm fine. I see your stories. This story actually came in yesterday. I just read it, and I was like, whoa. So I have a lot more, and I need to catch up. But thank you for listening, and I will see you. I might do another one today, or maybe tomorrow.
Let's read another scary story. This one was sent in by Alea. I live about 2 hours away from the Appalachian Mountains. My grandma, on the other hand, lives in them. I go to my grandma's house every weekend with my cousins to visit. My youngest cousin Henry and I love going into the woods at night to explore. At the time, we were 9 and 12 years old. It was around 8 to 10 p.m. on the night this happened. We were alone deep in the woods, with no houses or anything nearby. All we had was my BB gun and 2 flashlights. We were about half a mile away from my grandma's house, exploring woods we knew very well. Then, I heard what sounded like my oldest cousin calling for us. I turned to look at Henry, and he had the most horrified look on his face. "Did you hear that?" I asked. He just nodded. I started thinking about how there was no way we would have been able to hear my cousin if we were nearly a mile away from the house. We tried to shake it off as our imagination. About 20 minutes later, we saw bright green lights straight ahead in the woods. Almost like headlights, but too close together to actually be headlights. My cousin suggested that maybe it was my grandma and my cousin searching for us in her car, but she had a truck and the headlights wouldn't be that close together. We walked about 30 feet toward the lights when we realized it was in fact a car, just not my grandma's. My cousin suddenly started running back toward the house without telling me. When I turned around to talk to him, he was gone and I was all alone. I started running too until I suddenly heard Henry scream. I yelled his name and he came running up behind me with the most terrified look on his face. What happened? I asked him. He told me he saw a tall, lengthy, gray creature with the same colored eyes as the headlights hiding behind a tree. But when it noticed him, it started chasing him. I had never believed in things like flesh pedestrians, ghosts, mimics, or the living dead until we got back to my grandma's house and explained what happened. She told us she had lived there since she was 8 years old and that she and her brother used to do the same thing my cousin and I did, explore the woods at night. She explained that she has always been convinced there's something out in the mountains waiting for the right moment to do something to her or one of us, because something chased her once too. Now I'm really interested in the paranormal and I still go to my grandma's house every weekend, partly because I want to find out more about what that creature could have been. You know, I think we all know what type of creature this is. I don't think I even have to say it. It's definitely either a flesh pedestrian or a mimic trying to lure you to danger. You know, I always love stories about the Appalachian Mountains, so thank you so much, Alea, for sending this one in. If you guys have any stories you'd like me to read, please email them to me and I will get to them if I can. And I will see you in the next one.
Wait until you hear this premonition story. So this guy says, I died. I saw it. I lived it. He said either it was another world where there's another version of him that died that he saw, or he's going crazy, but he swears he died. He said there was a pep rally at school and afterwards they were all supposed to go back to class. He said he and his friend, they weren't into that idea. So instead, they wanted to leave the school and go across the street and stop at Sonic. He said across the school wasn't like heavy traffic, but if you didn't pay close enough attention, you could get hit. So he and his friend walked towards the road. They get to the edge of it and his friend had dropped something, so he pressed on first. He says he remembers seeing a red Tahoe and it was coming from almost out of nowhere and it hits him. He said he remembers everything. He remembers gasping for air. He remembers coming in and out of consciousness. Said, and then nothing. It went blank. And all of a sudden, he and his friend are back at the stadium. And he said he remembers hearing the words that came out of the principal's mouth. It was the exact same phrase that they had heard just before they had left the first time. And then his friend suggested they should go to Sonic. And he is internally freaking out. See, right there, I'd have been like, no. He said it almost felt like it had to be a dream. So out of curiosity, he said, so I went with him because I wanted to find out what would happen. Like, did we not already have how many movies about this? Okay, so they walk over, they approach the highway, and sure enough, his friend drops something. And then he's aware and he's looking around and he sees the red Tahoe coming from the distance. And he says to his friend, I'm going back to the school, dude. I'm not dying again. And he ends it with, I can still see myself laying over on the street lifeless. How freaking crazy is that? Guys, I want to know your thoughts, and I also want to know, I know some of you out there have got to have some premonition stories. Please share them with me. And if you're new here, don't forget to follow for more creepy story time.
If you've experienced a lot of unexplainable things like me, the movie Undertone is actually going to be pretty scary. I see a lot of bad reviews on the movie, but I saw it over the weekend and it actually genuinely had me creeped out because I'm not going to give away the storyline, but the events that happened in the movie with the characters that were in the movie reminded me so much of when I lived with my grandmother in the Appalachian Mountains and she was bedridden. There would be things around the house that were moved when there was no possible way they could be moved because I was the only one there with her and she was bedridden. She couldn't get up. In the middle of the night, there would be footsteps. I would hear her call my name in rooms she could not be in. So having all those things happen to me, there's no explanation except for supernatural. And if you think I'm lying, scroll on. I don't care. These things really did happen to me. And if you have lived in a haunted house or in an area where unexplainable things happen to you, Undertone is actually going to be a really scary movie. I would recommend going to see it. If you fit those boxes, let me know how it is.
My mom waited until she was dying with cancer to tell me that when she was 20, she made a pact with... This is not my own personal story. One of you guys submitted this, but I'm going to go ahead and tell it in the first person. When my mom was 20 years old, she got very deeply involved in dark magic. She says that she saw this as her only way to escape poverty. She grew up with absolutely nothing. There would even be days where they would have absolutely nothing to eat in the house. In her desperate attempt to try to make a better life for herself, she went ahead and made a pact with, and in exchange for her soul, she would never again have to worry about money for as long as she lived. After the ritual, it worked. Not long after, she became extremely successful. She started her own handmade jewelry business, where she would also sell like spiritual artifacts with it. It blew up. She now had the money, a house, a car, all of the things that she never had growing up. Around this time, she met my dad, and not long after, she had me and then my little brother. To the outside world, our life seemed perfect. She says until one night, a few years later, she wakes up in the middle of the night because she sees a dark figure standing near her bedroom door. She says that she knows it wasn't sleep paralysis because when she tried to move around, she could, and she kept blinking trying to get this figure to go away, but the figure just kept standing there, watching her. Then the room got extremely cold, and it was almost like all of the air was being sucked out of the room. Then before she knew it, she felt this thing speak to her, but it wasn't speaking to her like with its mouth. It was speaking to her with its mind. The voice said that if she wanted her prosperity to continue, that she would have to offer a sacrifice, and this sacrifice had to be someone that she loved. Immediately, my name and my brother's name came into my mom's mind. She said that she immediately refused. She started yelling and told her that she would never hurt her children, and whatever deal that she had made was over. But after that, everything in her life started to fall apart. Our dad ended up leaving us for absolutely no reason. Her business started to fail. All of the people that she trusted started to betray her. And then the worst thing came. My mom ended up being diagnosed with this aggressive form of cancer that doctors could not explain. I was 15 when things got really bad. We ended up having to move in with my aunt because my mom was unable to care for herself. Towards the last days of her life, we started to hear footsteps in the hallway. We would hear scratching behind the wall. Sometimes we would even hear chains being dragged in the hallway. But every time we would go out there, we could never explain where the sounds were coming from. Right before she passed away, she called me over to her bed, and this is when she confessed everything. She also mentioned that the last few nights she could see a dark figure standing in the corner of the room just watching, waiting. She started crying and said that she regretted ever making that pact. She told me that once you give something like that access to your life, your soul isn't enough. It will always come back asking for more. She also said that the last thing that she will do before passing away is to ask God for forgiveness. I will never forget the way she screamed that night. It wasn't crying, it was screaming like something was in the room with her. I would never forget the way that she screamed that night. It wasn't her crying, she was literally screaming. After she passed, it was almost like whatever was there with her, whatever was causing all the turmoil and bringing all of the negativity and all of the activity in the house, completely left with her.
This is a 100% true story that happened to a woman in Madison, Wisconsin. Now, there was this woman named Sherry who moved into this house with her 2 children in Madison, Wisconsin. Now, she said, at the time, she didn't believe in anything supernatural. She really thought that was a bunch of nonsense. But she said, right away when they moved in, she would notice, out of the corner of her eye, sometimes shadows moving across the walls. She would hear strange noises that she couldn't explain. But she said for the most part, it was just a normal house. One night, she's upstairs in her bedroom, and she's folding laundry. She hears talking coming from her son's room. So she makes her way over to his room, the door's closed, and she hears her son having a full-on conversation with someone. And she's like, who is he talking to, at 12:30 at night? So she opens the door, and when she looks in his room, he is not in his bed. So she starts yelling for him. She looks down and sees him next to the side of his bed, on his knees, crouched down, with his head under the bed, talking to someone. And she's like, hey, who are you talking to? Like, who's under there? And her son's like, I can't tell you. And she said, what do you mean you can't tell me? Like, who's under the bed? And he's like, I can't say. He'll get mad. And she's like, what? Who's under there? So she runs over to the bed and she looks underneath there. It's empty. There's nothing under there. So she's like, you know what? Just get back in bed. Like, just stop, doing whatever you're doing. Several weeks pass, and like on a regular basis, she keeps finding her son talking to someone under the bed, except there's no one there. So after a few weeks of this happening, she thinks maybe something is wrong with her son. So she takes him to this child therapist. The therapist assesses him and says, he seems completely fine. It's probably just his imagination. So several months pass, and he keeps on doing this. Well, one day she's sitting down in the living room with him, and they're talking, when she notices he has some scratches and bruises all over his body. And she's like, where did you get those scratches and bruises from? What's going on? And he's like, I can't say, I can't tell you. And she's like, yes, you have to tell me, what is going on with you? And finally he breaks down and he starts crying and stuff, and he just starts freaking out. And then he runs up to his room. So the mom, at this time is like, I don't know what to do. What is going on with my son? She's just panicking. Later that night, she's awoken to her son screaming in his bedroom. She runs as fast as she can. She goes in his room. She finds him halfway underneath the bed. He's grabbing onto the bed frame, and it looks like something is pulling him under the bed. So she immediately grabs him, pulls him out from under the bed. She looks under there. There's no one there. So she's like, you know what, this is weird. Like, you're sleeping with me tonight. You're going to be in bed with me tonight. So they go back to her bedroom. He lays down. He falls asleep. She's sitting in bed. She can't sleep. She's like freaked out about this whole situation. When all of a sudden she hears, shh, hey, come under the bed. And she's like, what? She looks over. Her son is sleeping. But then once again she hears, hey, come here, under the bed. I need to talk to you. And it's like a man's voice. And she's like, no, who are you? Like, go away. And the man's like, come on, get under the bed. I need to tell you something. And like, she's like, no, I'm not going under the bed. And she said this man, whoever he was, just started yelling obscenities and getting really angry. So she grabs her son. They get out of the house. And she said she left that night and never went back. And still to this day, that house sits there. And she said she's talked to the neighbors. And they said since she's moved, like several families have lived there and they move out immediately. People don't know about the land between the lakes. Now, the land between the lakes is this area on the border of Kentucky and Tennessee. And basically, at the time, there were two rivers that formed this piece of land in between. And apparently in the 60s, 70s sometime, they dammed it off and created what is now Lake Kentucky and Barkley Lake. And in between is this stretch of land that's become like this tourist destination where millions of people go every year to camp. Now, there are so many different legends and lore because apparently when they had dammed the lakes, they flooded entire towns, and some of these towns had cemeteries, and so a lot of these cemeteries are completely underwater, under the lake. And also, if you hike in this area where the land is, there are over like 270 cemeteries. Now, this is a story I heard out of the land of the lakes and how creepy this place is. So this guy said that him and his family went down for the 4th of July to stay at this cabin right next to Lake Kentucky. And he said, it was about midday. Him and his family were all outside right next to the lake. His sons were fishing, and he was just sitting there grilling out. Well, he said all of a sudden he hears a man's voice yelling, help me. And he said it sounded like it was coming from like the lake. And he's looking around, he doesn't see anyone, but he can vividly hear, like, help me, help me, help me. And so he gets his wife, and he's like, do you hear that? And she hears it. And they can't figure out like where this is coming from. And he's like, well, there's a bunch of people here, for 4th of July. Maybe it's someone camping nearby. So eventually, after they keep hearing this, he calls the sheriff. Sheriff comes out. He hears it. And he's confused because he's like, it's coming from the lake, but where is it coming from? Like, who is out there saying, help me? So he goes around and, goes to different campsites and cabins. No one is like, yeah, we're not yelling for help. Like, we don't need help. And he seems like very confused and stuff. Later that night, they're all in their cabin sleeping. And he said sometime in the middle of the night, they start hearing a banging at the door. And someone's like banging frantically at the front door of this cabin. And he said he could hear that same man's voice. And it was like yelling, help me, help me. So he's like, hold on. Like, I'm coming. He runs to the front door of the cabin. He opens it up. And he said it was just completely quiet outside. There was no one. And he said later on he talked to some locals. And they said, yeah. And like this stuff happens all the time. There have been, hundreds of people who drowned in this lake. And he said like every year so many people drown or they disappear and they're never seen from again. One of the other legends about this area is something they call the LBL beast, or the beast of the land between the lakes. And this thing is similar to the Dogman up in Michigan, right? And apparently in the 80s there was a whole family that was like massacred. And they tried to cover it up and stuff. Soldiers came from Fort Campbell. And a lot of people in the area, they say, yeah, they're like, there is something in these woods. We don't go out at night. So this is another story I heard about this man and his family. They go out camping in this area, and they actually stayed in a cabin. And I believe it was near Lake Kentucky. And he said, at night they decided to go for like a nice hike because it was really nice outside. So they started hiking down this trail, and they stumbled upon like a really old cemetery. And he said during the day they had seen it, but now at night it looked really creepy because it was kind of illuminated by the moonlight. And he said all of a sudden they seen something like moving by one of the stones. And he said that's when he noticed there was like dirt sort of flying up in the air. And he said as they got a little closer, there was something digging out like one of these graves. And he said all of a sudden this thing just stood up out of the hole. And he said it looked like a man but a dog. And it had these bright red eyes. And apparently, he said it let off this loud howl. And so he said him and his family, they took off running as fast as they can. They get back to the cabin and they lock the doors. And he said all night long, they could hear this thing running around the house, making howls, like going up on the porch, tapping on the window. And they said whatever it was stalked them all night. And the next morning they packed up and left. So what do you think? Have you heard any stories from the land of the lakes? An Appalachian skinwalker is much different than the Navajo skinwalker. Okay, the first difference is that a Navajo skinwalker, right, is conjured up by a medicine man, whereas an Appalachian skinwalker is conjured up by a witch in the Appalachia who uses black magic. The other big difference between the Appalachian skinwalker versus the native skinwalker is that the Appalachian skinwalker tends to take the form of objects, and a lot of time almost just comes as an invisible force that calls out to people or follows them. Or for instance, the Bell Witch, right? It wasn't a witch going after that family. It was a skinwalker that was conjured up to harm and, terrify that family. So I got a story for you. This is a true story now, and I'm going to show you a picture as well. So there's a man named Donald. Donald was an avid hunter and trapper. He lived near the North Carolina-Tennessee border up in the Appalachian Mountains. And one day, he's out hunting, and he's in the middle of the woods, and he set up, in this deer stand. And he'd been out there all day, and he's, had been hunting for the whole week, so he was getting tired. He falls asleep and dozes off. Well, when he awakes, it's now nighttime and it's gotten dark. And as he's adjusting some things in his tree stand, all of a sudden, whoosh, he hears this loud thing move over the top of him through the trees, like it's some kind of large bird or something. And he thinks it's odd because, he hasn't seen, birds that big in that area. But then once again, whoosh, right? This big thing just passes over the top of him through the trees, and it's shaking all the branches. And then again, a third time. So, he gets down off his tree stand and is like, okay, it's time to head back to camp. As he starts, walking this trail back to camp, all of a sudden he hears something, say, Donald, Donald, hey, Donald, come play. And this voice just keeps calling to him. And he, it's like freaking out. He's terrified. So he takes off running, and he's running as fast as he can. And all of a sudden, boom, he trips and he rolls. And he realizes he just tripped over this root that is sticking out of the ground. And when he looks up, he notices this big, eerie looking tree. And, it has no leaves on it, but it has branches that almost look like hands, and it looks like it has a face. And this tree starts staring at him and opens its eyes, and he can see that this tree has taken some kind of physical, like humanly form, and it starts reaching its branches down, and it grabs Donald, and it picks him up, and is shaking him and whipping him with the other branches. Well, Donald still manages to hold on to his rifle, and he just starts firing at the tree, and he manages to hit one of the branches that was holding his leg, and it basically breaks, and he falls to the ground. So he runs back to his cabin, and he gets inside, and he locks all the doors. And all night long, he can hear the tree lashing at the house, trying to get in. And the next morning, all is calm. But he notices outside, there's the tree. It has moved. It's next to the cabin. And he manages to take some pictures, which actually show the face in the tree. And this is the picture that Donald took.
Join myself and a special guest as we return to England's most haunted cemetery.
A former quarry turned into a 19th century cemetery with almost 60,000 graves buried here.
But how can a place of rest where mortal remains lie in peace be haunted? Well, there's a few reasons.
The graveyard has tales of ghosts, ghouls, witches and vampires. One of the most infamous spirits being that of Little Grace. Her origins we are not quite sure of, but either way, the spirit of the blonde little girl continues to haunt this cemetery through the tunnel.
St. James Cemetery was created in the early 1800s at the site of a former quarry. The cemetery was born out of desperation and convenience. The death toll was rising in Liverpool to the point the churches could no longer maintain the amount of burials required. Furthermore, where would the people go? Right to the heart of the city. It wasn't long before the cemetery opened its gates and burials began to take place. However, whilst the wealthier members of society may get a large headstone or even their own vault in the catacombs of the quarry, others were simply thrown in pits. Up to 30 deceased from Liverpool's slums would be placed in one pit together. This ultimately led to fears of sanitation and contributed to the cemetery's closure, with the later interments being only 2 feet underground as opposed to the compulsory 6 feet. The rain and bad weather was washing bodies to the surface. Not only this, but we have the fact the cemetery was turned into St. James Gardens to encourage the public to visit, with headstones being removed and used as borders. Some still do remain. However, with many grave sites being disturbed, it's no wonder it's gained a haunted reputation. There have been countless reports dating back to the late Victorian period of a vampiric figure that lurks within the catacombs. Alongside this, witches of Merseyside visit the cemetery to drink its mineral spring water, as it allegedly has healing properties. Whilst exploring, you may also encounter one of the many ghosts that are said to lurk within. Huskinson, for example, the first man killed by a locomotive, has a rather impressive monument and has been seen to wander the tombstones after dark. In fact, there are that many ghosts reported to lurk down here I couldn't possibly name them all in one video, so the one I will talk to you about is that of Little Grace. There are a few conflicting stories about the child's origin, but the most commonly told one is that she lived with a wealthy family in the Georgian Quarter and contracted a peasant's disease. The young girl ultimately died, and the family were ashamed to tell people she had passed away from such a common as illness. Therefore, her father ordered the servants to secretly bury Grace within St. James's Cemetery under the shadows of darkness. Her death ultimately being covered up and kept a secret. But one of the servants took pity on Grace and carved her name into the rock a couple of years later. This is still visible to this day, whether or not the story is true. However, accompanying this is the ghostly sightings of Grace that are still reported. The child is described as a friendly yet mischievous spirit, often appearing to mothers. If you don't fall into that category, however, you still aren't safe. There really is a ghost for everybody at St. James Cemetery.
When I was little, there was a woman at the window.
Oh, God!
Every night I'd see her standing just beyond the glass. Her face was never clear, but I knew that she was there. Long hair, pale dress, hands resting on the windowsill, as if she were waiting for me to notice her, and I always did. I'd call for my mum. She hated it, and she'd shuffle into my room in a dressing gown, her voice already trembling. What is it now? But she knew. I'd point to the curtains. She'd sigh, but her hands always shook as she reached for the fabric. She'd pull them back slowly, as though she half expected someone to be standing there.
This poor woman.
Staring in. I know. Every time she'd force a smile through her fear and say, "See? Nothing there." But I could tell from her eyes, narrowed, half closed, braced for something she couldn't explain, that she was never really sure. It wasn't just the woman at the window, though. Some nights I'd sit bolt upright in bed and call out for my mum, but it wasn't a normal call. She told me later that it sounded melodic, like I was saying, "Mom."
Oh.
When she came through the door, I'd already be sitting up in bed watching her, silent, wide-eyed, and then without a word, I'd lie back down and fall asleep again. I never remembered any of it in the morning. My mum swears those were the worst nights, the ones where I sang her name, because every time, she said, the curtains would already be half open, and she knew that she'd closed them.
Oh.
Thanks for reading. I hope it makes it on the pod. I'll cry tears of joy.
Oh
Much
my.
love.
Who did I spend the summer with? Part 1, While I Make Slime. Yeah. So I live in a toxic environment and I refuse to become the product of my environment. So I'm going to talk about some of the things that happen here. Yeah. Within the first couple of days of me being here, I've never seen so much dysfunction. Get your money's worth and let it drain. Thought I forgot? Be for real. No one in this house is sober except for 3 people, and I can't even name one of the people. But like, I'm basically the only fully sober one. I don't smoke, I don't drink, I don't do any of that. I'm letting y'all know now. Being around toxic people will literally drain, like suck the life out of you. And that's what it's been doing for me. But I've been trying to keep a positive attitude, but it's just hard, man. Like, it's genuinely hard. Like, for example, the other day, I had blow dried my hair, right? And when I blow dried my hair, I put my hair in a bun because I'm planning on doing something to my hair. I don't know yet. But I put my hair... Come on. I put my hair in a freaking bun. And I'm about to walk outside to film. And next thing you know, I hear somebody say, "What's that thing on top of your head?" And I'm like... a bun? And they're like, it looks raggedy. Okay, I'm gonna go myself. I'm like, oh, keep in mind, I've been depressed since I've been here. So I'm like, okay. And so I go in the bathroom, I fix the bun the best way I can, and then I put in like a little fake nose ring. And then same person goes, "What's that thing in your nose?" And I was like, oh, like a fake nose ring. And they go, "It turns a good looking young girl into a ratchet female, or raggedy female." You are not the person to talk when you called me the B word, and I'm not even gonna go into that. January 30th, I was kicked out of the house at 1 in the morning over something that was out of my control. I'm gonna explain more probably in the next video, but I was kicked out of the house. Okay, and I didn't take it seriously just because I was like, I'm not gonna be kicked out of a house that my mother pays most of the bills in at 2 in the freaking morning. You got me bent. So I laid my butt down and went to sleep. I've been kick slapped, kick stumped across the floor to where the wind got taken out of me and I threw up outside within the first 2 months of me living. No, the first month of me living in this house. Okay. I've been called an effing B word. I've been told that I was gonna get punched in my mother effing face. The list goes on the stuff that has happened to me in this house, and I can't really go into detail because I'm still here. I'm gonna start rocking backwards and forwards, but like I'm still here, so like I can't really go into the nitty gritty. But oh my gosh, my body is falling. Don't worry, y'all. Like I said, the tea will be dropped, and this is the little bit of the tea. Just wait till you get detailed story times. But I made some pink slime again because guess what? The 2 kids that I'm sharing the room with, they just went into all of my slime supplies and wrecked it, ruined it, just destroyed it. Okay? Yeah. So let's talk about the first time I was picked on and targeted in this house by basically the owner, right? So I had, the day before, I was called a B word, said I was going to get punched in my mother effing face, like I told y'all. And so I was like, you know what? I can't sit in this house and act like this is normal. I have to walk. So I ended up doing basically an hour walk to the gas station and back. And Miko, be freaking for real. When I get back, I was already crying on the walk, like already praying to God, just like asking him, please help me. Like I was already depressed. And when I get back, I make it into the room. Someone bangs on the door. And I'm like, yeah, come in. And this person goes, open the door. I open the door and they're like, clean this mother effing room. I'm like, huh? And they're like, clean this mother effing room. I'm like, oh, okay. And then I was leaning on the door while they were saying that because I literally had, I had 3 Gatorade bottles, a bag of chips, and a freaking beef jerky. So I'm holding this while the bag is breaking. I'm leaning on the door. This person goes, "You trying to close the door on me?" Matter of fact, yes. No. But I was like, no. And then they're like, oh, whatever. And so then they slammed the door, and I was on the phone with my grandma and my auntie. And then I'm like, and then this person goes, "You talking back?" I'm 21. I have no relation to that person whatsoever. And so I was like, no. And then I started to cry. It broke my little spirit down. And I started to cry. I got picked on. And that was the first time. And that's basically what started me getting picked on in this house. Even though I was already getting picked on and targeted. Yeah.
His neck was slashed. He was stabbed.
It's ridiculous.
Yeah, it was bad. It was really, really bad.
What if the tattoo shop you walked into used to be the site of a horrific crime? How about this? What if the victim never actually really left? So let's talk about it.
A few weeks ago, the owner of Artifact Tattoo had reached out to me. Now, I usually don't do private investigations, but this specific case really called out to me. According to the owner, Diego, in 2009, after he opened shop, is when weird and unexplainable occurrences started happening to him and his workers. And after doing some research, it turned out that his studio was not only the site of Muggsy's bar, but a site of a very violent crime.
Here's a lowdown. In February of 2006, co-owner Louis Campanelli would be unalived in his business that he helped run with Chris Rosas, who was not only his business partner, but also his best friend. Both him and his girlfriend were beaten and attacked, but Louis would endure the worst of the worst. And investigators later discovered that it wasn't just one person that committed this crime, it was actually two brothers. It was Chris and his brother, Ralph Rosas, who committed this horrific crime. Through the justice system, a few years ago, the brothers were finally convicted of first-degree murder, and they were sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. And the reason why they committed this crime is because Chris wanted Louis out of the business, and Louis refused to leave the business that he helped build.
Pictured here is Diego and his co-worker Darren. Now, after Diego opened Artifact Tattoo in 2009, him and his staff began noticing strange things almost immediately. Tools would be placed down and suddenly reappear somewhere else. This phenomenon is known as apportation. Objects would move across the room without any reason. Workers said they often felt like someone was watching them. And sometimes they would even be touched. One of the strangest moments actually happened after Diego closed the shop for the night. According to him, he left a protein shake in the fridge for the next day, but when he came back the following morning, it had spilled all over the floor. The craziest thing is that the Ring camera captured the moment. You see, no one was there. The Ring camera didn't pick up on anything. No one walked into the shop. Everything was locked up, and no doors were even open. Here's what he showed us.
That is crazy. Yeah, right there. It's like someone literally.
Now, during our investigation with my trusted partner, intuitive investigator Tawny Lewis, we picked on quite a few things that made itself very, very known, and especially one dominant character.
For you, Louis. This is all for you, okay?
It turned out that Louis, the former owner of Muggsy's, is still around. And through many EVP sessions conducted by the staff, it turned out that it is him through intelligent responses. And it turned out that the reason why he's still there is not because he's trapped. It's because he still is running business. And Muggsy's, which is now Artifact Tattoo, will always be his home, even in death. Like for part 2, if you want to know more about what we found in our investigation and what Louis requested of his female staff. Stay haunted and weird.
So if I told you that my dad signed an NDA to hunt something that wasn't supposed to exist, and that the people funding it weren't scientists, but billionaires, you wouldn't believe me, but this was posted on a forum where people share their real supernatural encounters, and the details are much more terrifying. So I found this story buried on a thread where people anonymously confess strange things that they've experienced or that they've witnessed or that they had heard of. And this one story was about this guy who he had posted it and said his father worked for a private maritime security in the early 2000s. He was a former Navy, he was quiet, he was disciplined, and he never really exaggerated anything. But when he was dying, he told his son something that he absolutely couldn't make sense of. And he said, "We weren't hunting sharks." Now, according to the post, his dad was contracted by a shell company connected to ultra-wealthy collectors, right? Like, the job was escort a research vessel about 200 miles off the coast, past normal shipping lanes, and there was no Coast Guard oversight, no official paperwork, and everything was sealed under NDAs. Now, the coordinates allegedly lined up disturbingly close to the area of the 1997 Bloop, that sound that was detected by the Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. So the father told him that was the reason that the investors got interested in that area in the first place. And they weren't looking for treasure, they weren't looking for proof of anything like that, but for 3 nights, nothing happened. And just open ocean and sonar, anomalies that technicians blamed on like thermal layers and BS like that. However, on the 4th night, just after 2 a.m., the sonar technician froze dead in his seat, and something was moving beneath them. It wasn't swimming, but it was pacing, and it was matching the boat's speed, like nose to nose, and it was large, he said. Now, the dad and 2 others were ordered to deploy a baited cage, and it was of like raw tuna and animal blood and, nothing really scientific, not careful, just bait just thrown out there, right? Well, that's when the water started to vibrate. And the post said his dad described a shape surfacing about 30 yards from the vessel. And at first, they thought it was maybe a diver or pale, shoulders, long, like a long dark shark or something like that. But it wasn't treading water. It was perfectly still and it was watching them. Now, the deck lights flickered and the radios cut to static immediately. And then the thing submerged without a splash. And moments later, something slammed the underside of the boat, and it was hard enough to knock one of the crew off of his feet. So the billionaire guests on board, yes, they were physically there, started arguing, and one of them wanted to capture it alive, and another just wanted footage. And this guy's father said that they lowered a reinforced net into the water and they caught something. But when they started hauling it up, the screaming began. And it wasn't mechanical, it wasn't a wail. They said that it sounded human, but it pierced their ears. And the dad said that he dropped his gloves because whatever was in that net started thrashing in a way that didn't make biological sense one bit. It was too strong and it was too coordinated. Then one of the cables actually snapped and the net plunged back into the black water. And the ocean went silent again. No more vibrating, no more splashes, no wake, just complete silence. The investors shut the operation down immediately on the spot, and everyone signed amended NDAs with heavier penalties, and the sonar logs were confiscated immediately, and the footage was seized. But here's the part that made the post even more disturbing when I found it. When his dad came home, he stopped eating seafood, like entirely. Wouldn't even sit near it, and once just got, when he was watching this documentary about deep sea creatures, he muttered, "They're not animals." And he was younger and he didn't really pick anything up. But, before his dad died, he told his son something. And he said when the net came up for those few seconds under the floodlights, he saw a face. It wasn't a fish, but it was a human face with eyes that reflected like a cat's eyes or like a raccoon's eyes. And it had gills opening along the side of its ribs. Now, the forum post ended with this. He said, "Believe me or don't, but check missing yacht records from the region between 2003 and 2006. And there's a pattern. And my dad swore they weren't hunting a myth. They were trying to own one." So tell me, if creatures like that actually exist out there, do you think that they're hiding from us, or are we hiding from them?
I will be offering an extended version of this also on Patreon. We're seeing a pattern. These aliens are showing themselves. I have another video that I just recorded in my queue that's coming this week. That again is alien. Why is this happening? The veil is thinning. It's time for us to understand that we've never been alone. And this creature in particular is so deeply compassionate, kind, soft. It's where the mythical stories of mermaids stem from. The kindness, when he was describing the scream, I don't know about some of you guys, but I could feel it. It felt like a vulnerable child, because they're so innocent, not naive, innocent. She purposely put herself in the net so they could witness her. She intuitively knew that they would release her, which is why she did this. Or else she wouldn't have. And that's why they haven't in the past, because they feel out who's in that boat to know if I'll be let go or not. Okay. This is a group that obviously lives in the ocean. This is the group that started the mythical, it's mythical, but it's real, obviously, stories of mermaids. The story has been embellished a bit more than is true, but let's just say stay to the origins of the story, which starts with an alien creature. I think we need to sort of get the word alien out of our system, because alien triggers a thought and a feeling. There's like a bottom to the ocean that's visible to science, but then there's another layer below that that isn't visible, and that's where they come from. This is a very high vibration group that is steeped in compassion and kindness. It's like my heart is just full. So anyone who's ever been drawn to mermaids, or even just after this, if you're drawn to them, go towards that and put that in your meditation. Ask them to come to you at night so they can show themselves in your dreams. These are the beings that will help raise the vibration of this planet and save us from ourselves. I guess, it's like there's a hesitancy to use the word human, but for the sake of explaining what I'm seeing and being told, I will, because they are partially human, have human attributes, but they're still amphibian more so. They just happen to be a visually very beautiful species, so humans are drawn to them, right? Versus other beings that may not be as visually pleasing to the eye, but are also higher vibration. It's like, humans are so stuck on what something looks like or what someone looks like, that we sort of consume ourselves with that instead of what's going on inside. They have been here before humans. Like, they've been here through so many different cycles of what Earth has gone through, that this isn't new to them. So they aren't hiding from us. They're just so tuned in to the universe's message that they understand when it's appropriate to be seen and when it is not. And they understand when humans will possibly be ready to know that they exist, accept that, raise their vibration towards that. Here's the thing they're saying. The problem is, if they make themselves seen too soon, humans would capture them and study them and slowly kill off their entire species. They're wiser than that. So they purposely stay back because their species is not supposed to be killed off. That vibration is what could save us.
Weird spooky story time, and it wasn't the little tiny feet she saw that scared her, it was that it knew her name. She was just a child in Nicaragua when this happened. I don't know her exact age, but she was young. She was using a bathroom. It was sort of public, or shared. It was a different time in a small village, so I'm not exactly sure how it worked, but she was alone in a stall. And then, in the stall next to her, she saw little feet. They were peeking out from under the divider. The rest of the body was hidden by the wall, but she could tell it was very small. She described the shoes as little brown shoes, tiny, with small feet, short legs. She said they looked like little leprechaun feet. I know that might sound silly, but this wasn't funny, because then it started talking. It called her by name. It knew her name. That alone frightened her. But then it started laughing, a strange cackling laugh. And it began saying things about her family, things only she would know. It started asking her to follow it, telling her to come with it. That's when she realized this wasn't harmless. It wasn't playful. It felt malicious, like it wanted to hurt her or take her somewhere. She didn't stay to find out. She ran ran out of that bathroom without looking back. And as she ran, it was still laughing, still cackling behind her. She told the adults who were taking care of her at the time, and they didn't seem surprised. They said they knew what it was and told her to ignore it, to stay away. Whenever my mom tells this story, you can see the fear come back. Even now, she doesn't like talking about it. Sometimes she even gets angry when I ask her to tell it again because she hates remembering. So I'm curious, has anyone else heard stories like this? Duendes? They seem very common in Spanish cultures and even in some Asian traditions. Small beings calling children by name, laughing in places they shouldn't be. I think the scariest part about this is that it knew her name and it knew her family, and the adults knew about it. They were like, just ignore it, just ignore it. So it's like they know that as long as you don't engage it, you're fine. That you have to somehow talk to it or do something with it for it to have any kind of power over you, which is very much duende lore-esque. Let me know in the comments what you guys think, or if you've ever had an experience like this, send it my way.
I need to tell you guys this ghost story. This story was sent into my email, and if you have any ghost stories, paranormal experiences, or scary stories that you'd like to share, you can send them to the email in my bio. I grew up spending a lot of time at my grandfather's house in the Philippines. If you've ever seen older homes there, you know they're very different from modern houses. This one was huge, built mostly out of wood and bamboo, with long hallways, wide open rooms, and floors that creaked whenever anyone walked across them. It was the kind of house that always made noise, but the strange thing was, not all of those noises could be explained. You see, in our family, we were pretty used to things that most people would consider paranormal. It wasn't something we talked about dramatically, it was just part of life in that house. For example, we had this old radio sitting in one of the rooms. Sometimes, completely out of nowhere, it would turn itself on. It didn't matter if it was in the middle of the night or during the day. Music would start suddenly blasting through the house. The weirdest part, the radio wasn't even plugged in. And if someone tried to turn it off, it would switch itself right back on again. So eventually, everyone just stopped bothering with it. If it started playing, we'd just walk past it like it was a noisy appliance. Another thing that happened pretty often was the feeling of someone jumping onto our beds while we were sleeping. You'd be lying there, half asleep, and suddenly the mattress would dip or bounce like someone had just climbed onto it. But when you opened your eyes, there was no one there. Instead of panicking, we'd just complain about it like it was an annoying roommate disturbing our sleep. So, overall, we were pretty accustomed to living with things. But the important part is that whatever was in that house never really interacted with us directly until one morning. It happened close to Christmas. My sister was 13 at the time. We woke up around 5 in the morning because she was hungry. The house was still quiet and dark. The kind of quiet that only exists in the early hours before sunrise. She got up and went downstairs to the kitchen. When she walked in, she saw our mom already there, which wasn't strange at all. Our mom always woke up early, especially when there were holidays coming up. She loved preparing food for the family. According to my sister, our mom looked up at her and smiled. She greeted her, then served her some food for breakfast. My sister sat down at the table and started eating. While she was eating, she started talking to our mom about normal things. School, her classmates, little things that had annoyed her the day before. Just casual morning conversation. But later she told me something that had stuck with her. She said our mom never really responded to what she was saying. She just sat there across the table, smiling, quietly watching her eat. At the time, my sister didn't think much of it. We're very close with our mom, and we're used to rambling about our day while she listens. So she finished eating, washed her plate, and decided to go back to bed because she was still sleepy. The whole house was still quiet. I was asleep in the next room. My sister climbed back into bed and grabbed her phone. That's when she saw a message from our mom. The message said, "Can you make breakfast for you and your sister when you wake up? I'm at the market buying food for Christmas." The message ended with, "Thank you. Love you." My sister stared at the message for a long time because she had just been downstairs. She had just eaten breakfast. and she had just been sitting across the table talking to our mom. But according to that message, our mom hadn't even been home. And that meant something else had been sitting in the kitchen, smiling at my sister, watching her eat while she talked, completely unaware that she had been alone in that kitchen the entire time.
Might have known the story of real-life boogeyman.
In honor of Women's History Month, I'm doing 31 Days of Women in Horror. If you survived the original Final Destination, then you definitely remember this character. That's Allie Larder. Before becoming one of horror's most recognizable survivors, Larder appeared in the 1999 remake of House on Haunted Hill, playing Sarah Wolfe. But in 2000, she became a horror icon when she played Claire Rivers in Final Destination. Her character was one of the few people who understood death's terrifying design. She returned to the role in Final Destination 2, helping connect the events of the franchise. Allie Larder then stepped into a massive horror universe. In 2007, she played Claire Redfield in Resident Evil's Extinction, based on the legendary video game series. She continued the role in Resident Evil Afterlife and again in Resident Evil Final Chapter. She later appeared in the supernatural thriller Diabolical and joined the horror anthology world in Creepshow. In 2021, she appeared in The Last Victim and the chilling true crime-inspired thriller The Man in the White Van. From surviving death itself to battling zombies in the Resident Evil universe, Allie Larder has become one of horror's most consistent genre stars. Come back tomorrow for my 31 Days of Women in Horror.
Florida man claims to have been kidnapped by dolphins and forced to build an underwater city. The man was found early Monday morning on the side of a beach in Lee County, soaking wet, dehydrated, and confused. When deputies arrived, he was drawing detailed diagrams in the sand. According to the man, a pod of dolphins took him while he was swimming and brought him to a place about 40 feet under the surface. He said they forced him to help build underwater structures. He told deputies the dolphins communicated with him using clicks. He said the group had a leader named Gerald who somehow helped him breathe underwater, possibly by creating an airspace. The man spent 3 days working on what he described as cities, towns, and condo-like structures. When the dolphins were satisfied with his work, they sent him back to the surface and told him they would return for phase 2. Medical staff treated him for dehydration, but found no signs of head injury or mental confusion. Tests showed seawater and marine particles in his lungs, suggesting he had been deep underwater for a long time without typical lung damage. This was unusual and raised questions for doctors. The man holds a master's degree in aerospace engineering and has experience with deep-sea technology, which he says is why the dolphins chose him. Some people think the story is false, but the physical evidence has made others curious. Let me know what you think.
We listen, we don't get scared, and we don't judge. Let me tell you guys the story time of the couple who sacrificed their children to gain riches. So there was a couple, right, who had just gotten married and things was just not going right in their marriage, y'all. And the problem with this couple was that it was those kind of couples that like things, you know, there are those people that just like to show off. So they needed a plan, and a plan for us to make money. Do you understand? Cool. They one time the husband meets somebody at work, and the person tells them about this Malawian guy who helps people, yada yada yada, and they're like, here's the number, like this guy's number is so and so, but he's scared of doing it. And the husband is like, yo, like give me the number, maybe I won't be so scared to like call this guy. Right? Shabu, he eventually gets home, tells the wife the story, and the wife is like, listen, bruh, like, let's just do it. You know, what could possibly hurt us? You know, like, we could get a snake, it's gonna stay in a room. Obviously, they think that's how it works, but anyways. Okay, they call the guy. The guy is like, no, I'm not from South Africa, I'm from Malawi. You guys have to travel. You guys have to come to the country to get your thing. But he's like, I don't deal with snakes. I deal with children, right? The couple at this point don't have a child, right? So the guy's like, what do you mean? He's like, your wife has to get pregnant, and if you guys are serious, when your wife is pregnant, like 4 months in, and the wife is like 4 months pregnant, the wife has to come to you, and the wife has to come to Malawi, and we are going to do 1, 2, 3, 4, 50. Do you understand? Okay, the guy talks to his wife. The wife is like scared, but she's like, you know what? Okay, let's do it. Mama, sharp. They decide to conceive, y'all, and obviously they get lucky and the wife gets pregnant. And as soon as the wife is 4 months pregnant, like the guy said, they call him, they're like, hey, like we're ready. The guy's like, okay, pull through. They go to the guy's house, and when they get there, the wife, I don't know what happened to the wife, right? They do whatever they do on the wife, but these people are told that as much as you guys, the wife was not told, guys, but the husband was told that, listen, what we are doing to your wife will never have children ever again. And when it's time for another sacrifice, which is a child, your wife will have to get pregnant again, and the husband was like, yeah, sure, no problem. They get to South Africa, y'all, and obviously the witch doctor did tell them that things are going to get terrible before they get better. You understand? They're gonna go from bad to good. When they get to SA, the wife is constantly bleeding, like she's sick, they're scared and all of that. And they take her to the hospital, and then she comes back from the hospital, and at some point everything just stops. Things start to look good. The money starts coming in, they start to make bank and all of that. Like, it's just nice, okay? Now the thing with this is the wife was now always getting miscarriages, y'all. At this point the wife felt like, no man, this thing is actually kind of more terrible than it is for the guy. Like, I'm always the one that's suffering. So now it's time for them to have it to give the witch doctor another sacrifice for the whatever that they had went to go get at Malawi. And the wife is like, I'm not doing it. I'm not doing it again. Like, I'm tired. This thing, every single time we do this thing, like, it only affects me and not you, so I don't want to do it. Husband is like, bro, like, we signed up for this. Like, there is no coming out of it. And the guy is like, I can't suffer. Like, come on. Like, what, like, please do it. Wife is like, no. Guy calls the Malawian witch doctor. The witch doctor tells the Malawian guy, listen, the Malawian witch doctor tells the guy, listen, it's easy. You can always find somebody else, and then you're gonna bring that person to Malawi so that we can do whatever we did to your wife to that person. Guy is like, yes, man. Guy decides to find the side chick. Now the side chick that he found is the one who told me and my mother the story. Do you understand? This is the person that I know. I didn't know the wife, but obviously I know of the story of the wife. Guys, meets the side chick. We're gonna call this girl side chick for story's sake. Meets side chick. Side chick obviously sees herself a man with money and all of that, and she decides, listen, I'm gonna sit here and I'm going to build. Guy impregnates her. They find out after 2 months that girl is pregnant. Girl is like, yo, I'm pregnant, whatever. Guy's like, listen, I'm ready to do right by you. Like, I wanna marry you. Actually, the girl was like, the guy was like, listen, we need to go to my traditional healer. He calls this guy a traditional healer in Malawi so that this person can strengthen you and the baby and all of that. Girl puts on the terms and the conditions that, no, before we do that, I want you to marry me. Guy is like, no, chill, we can do that. Obviously, guy tells the other wife to leave, divorces her, goes for this wife. Goes to the lady's home, and they get married, whatever they do things traditionally. She gets the wallet and all of that. She goes to Malawi, and the guy does whatever they do. They come back. It did not even take 2 weeks from them coming back from that guy, and she lost the child. Now they used her as the sacrifice, right? Sharp. Y'all, life goes on and on and on and on. Guy eventually realizes that, no man, I actually want kids. Like, obviously he knows that the side chick is not gonna get any kids, so he decides to tell side chick, listen, I want to get married, I want a polygamy, blah blah blah. Side chick is like, no, but you can't just do that. Like, I don't want that, nah. And the guy's like, listen, it's either you allow for me to get another wife or 2, or you leave. Now, guys, side chick obviously has invested and she really loves this guy. She decides to agree to everything, even though it hurts her, because baby boy is not willing to sacrifice anything, right? And also, the Malawian guy was the one that told him, listen, even if this one leaves, you can always get another one and we do the sacrifice on her. It's okay. Wow. Okay, guy gets 2 more wives, and now it's 3 of them, and then there's side chick's the first wife, then there's this one, then there's this one. Mind you, another thing that I missed in the story is that every single time it was time for the guy to sacrifice to the thing that he has in Malawi, this guy would tell side chick, babe, get pregnant. We need to try again to have a child, and he would assure her that everything's gonna be okay, and she would get pregnant, guys. And as soon as she gets pregnant, 3 months down the line, she loses the baby. Do you understand what I'm saying? Every single time, like, it was a pattern at this point. After a couple of months, like, she gets pregnant, she loses the baby. Nah. Okay, guy gets married, she can't have kids. She asked the guy, let's do an IVF, and the guy's like, no, because obviously the witch doctor told him, like, this one can have no kids whatsoever. So he refuses for an IVF, tells her that, hey, I'm a traditional man, like, IVF for what, for who, for when? Understand? Cool. And these people had been together for 10 years, so imagine this has all been happening for 10 years. Eyesight chick is strong, man. Anyways, Now the man is, I don't know how many years later it was, like now the man has 2 wives, these 2 wives have kids, but her, one day she decides, I don't know what happened in her marriage, she decides to come to my mom, well, she didn't come to my mom, she came to my mom's friend, and we happened to be there. Do you understand what I'm saying? So they were there, and they were talking, so she confides in my mom and her friend, and she tells them like, yo, like, I'm going through it, like, every single time I get pregnant, I lose a child, and my husband refuses for us to do IVF. Like, I think something is wrong. Can you guys please help me? I don't know, blah, blah, blah. They obviously advise her to go to a traditional healer. Between my mom and her friend, somebody suggested that they know somebody, right? They like, this person stays in the mountain, deep within the mountains, right? So we need to call this person today, and then we'll take you tomorrow. Do not tell your husband anything because he's gonna refuse. Abo, shabu. They call the guy. They tell the guy the story. The guy's like, listen, let me talk to the lady. Won't understand. So this guy diagnoses you through the phone, and he needs to speak to you so that he can decide how he's gonna help you. Cool. He talks to my mom's. No. He talks to side chick. He tells side chick, or no, come through here at before the sun rises. Sorry, before the sun rises, you should be here, chilled. Fast forward, the next day comes. It's 4 a.m. When it's 4 a.m, we get there, and then they tell me, my mom, and her friend stay in the car. Side chick goes inside with this guy, and they start doing things, whatever. And she is crying inside that like hut, and we don't know what's going on. She's crying. They take her. There's a river near this guy's house where he does all his cleanses and all of that, and they're cleansing her, whatever. When she comes out, guys, she's bleeding. As she's bleeding, the traditional healer tells us, no, let her bleed, and something needs to come out here, and when that thing comes out, the bleeding will stop. Okay, she bleeds for like a couple of minutes, and then this thing that would look like a bundle of worms came out, and then these worms like spread out, like they kind of spread out, and then he sprinkle salt and like herbs and all of that on top of it, and she's like, it's okay, you're okay now, you'll be fine. Okay, she drinks water, she comes back to life, y'all. She's alright. We leave. As we're leaving, we ask baby girl Pela, we're waiting, like, what happened? She tells us that apparently the husband is a ritualist, the husband did this to the wife, and the wife left, and the wife is suffering now because the wife did not go to a traditional healer to get cleansed, and also she's suffering because she's the one she also was there when they both started this, so she's suffering even more, and that the husband used her as a sacrifice and all of that, all that I told you in the beginning of the video. And then we ask her, like, are you gonna leave the guy? Guys, this lady was not willing to leave this guy. After he did this, at this point, he could literally kill you. Eventually, guys, she left the guy because the guy started to abuse her because she went to the witch doctor. She ruined things for him. She left, and then the guy obviously got another wife, and he did exactly what he did to the other ladies. And yeah, I guess the wicked never die. They never lose. They do, but rarely.
Hey TikTok, I'm back with another spooky scary story time. So basically, when me and my siblings were younger, we always would like build forts. Like, we had so many blankets, so many quilts, like we would just build forts any and everywhere. Like, I know our grandparents and our aunts and uncles hated to watch us because we always had to clean up a big ass fort that we made. It was this one day, and my mom and my dad were watching us though, but we was building like a fort. It was really my idea, and I grabbed all the blankets, all the pillows, I grabbed ladders, chairs, and built a fort. How you supposed to build a fort? This was like the one time I built like a huge fort. Like, I was getting better and better and better at building it, and it was so freaking big, right? So just keep that in mind. Me and my siblings, I'm the oldest one, but my younger siblings, like, they're so small. So, well, they were so small. Like, they kept going in and out of it, playing in it, but I made it to where you can see like the TV while you're inside of it, so it had like a little bit of light into it. I guess I didn't see all my siblings run out of it at like different times or whatever. I know that they had a bad habit of like messing up the fort. Like, I used to get so tight when they messed up the fort, and so I seen like one of the chairs was kind of like on the ground a little bit, like it like flipped, and that part of the blanket was like touching the ground. But instead of it like being fully on the ground, like, it looked like somebody was laying down sideways looking at the TV that you could see from inside of the tent. And they were moving and all, like, they was like getting real comfy in there. So I'm like, bro, like, why would you break the fort? Why would you do that? Like, I don't like when y'all be doing that. I didn't know who I was talking to. and they're ignoring me, but they're still moving and getting comfy. And I'm like, I know you hear me. Like, I'm knowing that they're younger than me. My siblings is younger than me, but like, I'm like, I know you hear me. When I'm seeing this, I'm at the back of the tent. I'm not at the front of the tent. So I walk around and go to the front. And why is there nobody in this tent? Now, keep in mind, I said I had pillows too. So some of y'all might be thinking, oh, it was probably just a few pillows, you know, moving somehow. No, it was not no pillows moving. It was no pillows in that area. The pillows was like on the sides of it. And like this area was like the area that was moving. And so I asked my siblings, first I'm yelling their name. Where y'all at? Like, y'all wasn't just in the tent? And they're like, no, we was in our rooms. We didn't want to be in the tent no more. And I'm like, okay, it freaks me out. That was a spooky, scary story time for y'all. I have plenty of more stories on my page, so just check them out. Make sure y'all hit that follow button. And yeah. Okay, TikTok, please tell me you guys seen that video of this lady that had multiple paranormal activity going on in her house. She caught this one incident on camera. Like I said, this lady claims that a lot of paranormal activity is going on in her house. Now, the video that I seen, like, it actually take part in action. I didn't see anybody link her account down below or anything like that, so I wasn't able to check if like her account had multiple videos of paranormal activity. Let's just say this video was crazy. So in the video, the lady is, you know, chilling, minding her business, and she's already kind of spooked out because of the reason that I said already. She gets even more spooked out once she starts hearing like singing coming from her bathroom, and it sounded like the shower was on, right? She did not have the shower on. She was home alone. And in the video, you could hear that the house was, like, pretty quiet. Like, as quiet as possible. She's walking up to the bathroom recording. But she's walking up slowly, right? And when she opens the bathroom door, you can still hear singing. And you can hear the shower be on, right? So she flicks the light on. And when she flicks the light on, something moves, and you can tell it was like in the shower. The sound of the shower being on went completely away, and it was just like whoa, what was that? Now after that, she just, you know, is like scoping the scenery out. She stays by the bathroom to see if anything weird is happening, but she also is showing the camera that like nobody else is in this bathroom. She just walks back out after, and I guess the video ends right there. Now some of y'all may be saying like this is AI, because honestly, the way AI is like becoming, you can't really tell if this is AI or not. I can say though that this is like the best AI video that I feel like I've seen personally when it comes to like paranormal activity and ghosts and stuff. But I'm gonna put the account down below that I seen the video on, and you guys can come back on here, comment, and let me know your thoughts. And don't forget to hit that follow button. I have so many of my own personal spooky scary story times on my account, so make sure you follow and check them out.
Do you guys know the sound? Well, I know you know the sound. Let me just... This sound.
What do you mean?
I know.
I took him to my house, walked him down the street. I don't know why the media acts like the couldn't walk. He walked very well. Walked him upstairs, kicked his ass.
The woman speaking is Angela Simpson, and the story behind that audio is one of the most disturbing true crime cases to ever come out of the state of Arizona. The man she's speaking about is 46-year-old Terry Nelly. For 3 days, Angela Simpson did unspeakable things to that man until she eventually ended it all. Angela Simpson was born November 29th, 1975 in Phoenix, Arizona. Very little is known about her early life, partly because she's refused to share any details in any of the interviews that she's done, and partly because there was never really a deep investigation into her background. But what she has said, in her own words, paints a picture of someone who struggled in their childhood. Quote, "I started being hospitalized at 10 years old. I have a mental history from 10 years old until present," end quote. Angela eventually had 4 children as an adult, but she's always refused to talk about them as well. By 2009, she was 33 years old, still living in Phoenix, and not in a good place in her life at all. Terry Neely was also living in Phoenix. Terry was a 46-year-old man living in an assisted care facility. He had some health issues, so he used a motorized wheelchair to get around. He also heavily relied on the employees of the facility to give him him daily support. The exact health complications that Terry had are not clear, but the point is that he was a vulnerable man, physically limited, dependent on others, and not in any position to protect himself from any kind of violence. On the evening of August 2nd, 2009, Terry Neely left in his wheelchair from his assisted living facility, and that was the last time anyone would ever see him alive. We later find out that the reason he left is because he was headed to an apartment where he was planning on meeting up with 33-year-old Angela Simpson. The two seemed to be acquainted with each other, and Angela had practically lured Terry to that location on the promise that she would give him something that he wanted. But the truth was that she had no intentions on following through with either of those things. Instead, she invited him there as a trap because for whatever reason, Angela was under the impression that Terry was a snitch. And being invited to an apartment to do what Angela was promising to do to Terry was not an unusual thing, by the way, in the world that Angela was involved in, and I guess in the world that Terry was also once involved in as well. But Angela heard word that Terry snitched on her for doing things that she should not have been doing in the streets. And one thing about Angela is that she had no room in her life for snitches. And the moment that apartment door closed behind Terry, Angela ambushed him, and she did not hold back. Angela Simpson has never described what she said to him first or whether she gave him any warning at all, but based on her own account to investigators, the horror started almost immediately once they were inside. From that point forward and over the next 3 days, Terry Nelly would experience something that homicide detectives with decades of experience on the job would later describe as among the worst things that they have ever seen. The way that investigators were able to determine what happened inside of that apartment comes from Angela's own confessions, the crime scene analysis, and the findings of the medical examiner. Angela Simpson took a tire iron, and when talking about this, when explaining what she did with it, she explained it as using it on Terry in the way that a person might describe fixing a car. She also had a variety of sharp objects that you might find in a kitchen, and she used those to create at least 50 separate injuries. She took a hammer and used it for what hammers are meant to be used for, but on a human being, driving a 3-inch nail directly into Terry's skull. She took pliers to remove his teeth, and as if all of that was not horrific enough, Angela then took a full-length mirror and placed it in front of him so he could watch with his own 2 eyes exactly what was being done to him because she thought that he, quote, needed to see what he deserved. And when she was satisfied with what she put him through, when she thought that he had suffered as much as he deserved, she then took a television cable and she him, and that was what ended up being his cause of death, meaning that through every other injury, Terry Nelly had been alive not only to feel but to see in his own reflection in that mirror. Terry was reported missing to authorities on August 2nd. On August 5th, firefighters in North Phoenix were called to respond to a residential trash bin on fire located behind a church. When they were able to put out the fire, they found human remains inside. The remains were so badly damaged that identifying the victim took fingerprint analysis, but once those results came back, it was confirmed that those fingerprints were a perfect match to 46-year-old Terry Nelly. Angela Simpson had taken the body apart, both legs off, one arm off, and she placed the pieces into a City of Phoenix garbage can. Terry Nelly had been missing for 3 days, and nobody could have imagined that pieces of him would be found in trash cans. In the immediate aftermath of the body being found, Phoenix police officers had a victim, but no confirmed suspect, no confirmed crime scene. Investigators began working the case, and in the days that followed, an anonymous tip came in. Someone had seen Terry Nelly's motorized wheelchair abandoned outside of an apartment building in North Phoenix. When authorities made it to the building, and inside of the unit that a witness believed to be the building manager had alerted them to, what they found inside was devastating, to say the least. The apartment was drenched in absolutely covered in red, so much of it, everything was stained. The carpet had been removed, presumably to try and get rid of evidence, and DNA analysis confirmed that it all belonged to Terry, confirming that that was the crime scene that they had been looking for. That apartment building that they were called out to wasn't actually Angela's. It was the building of a man called Edward Cracker McFarland, who just so happened to be very good buddies with Angela Simpson. So finding Edward and finding Terry's wheelchair outside of his apartment building ultimately was part of what led investigators to finding Angela Simpson and searching her apartment, and they had more than enough reason to believe that it was both of them responsible for what happened to Terry. Allegedly, there was also another witness claiming that they saw Angela and Edward and that they were fully talking about what they had done to Terry, bragging about it and saying that they would do it again. And as it turned out, police officers did not have to work very hard to find Angela Simpson because she was already in jail. Shortly after disposing of Terry's body and failing to get rid of evidence, both Angela and Edward had been arrested on an unrelated robbery charge, meaning that Angela Simpson was already sitting in a cell when Phoenix police detectives came to interview her about Terry Nelly. And she didn't ask for a lawyer. She didn't try to construct a story. She simply told them what happened. According to Phoenix News Times, she agreed to talk to investigators in exchange for a candy bar. Her confession is one of the most chilling ones that I've ever heard because it's like the woman is talking about the weather. She could not be any more calmer, any more relaxed if she tried. She did not once minimize what she had done. She didn't once try to deflect blame. She explained what she did in detail, matching details that investigators were still in the process of uncovering. And she did it without any visible sign of regret. And her motive was simple. Terry Nellie was a snitch. According to her, Terry had, quote, told on a righteous person he deserved what he got, end quote. One detective pointed out that the Phoenix Police Department had no record of Terry Nellie ever being a police informant or a snitch, that as far as they could find, he had never cooperated with law enforcement. Angela responded with, quote, he told me he was a snitch. He told me himself, end quote. And when she acknowledged the possibility that he may have been lying or bragging and not actually a snitch, Angela responded with, quote, oops, if he wasn't, end quote. She had no remorse. She said so clearly and repeatedly, saying that she did not feel guilty, that she had no remorse, and that the only thing that upset her was that she would not be able to get rid of more stitches if she was behind bars. She described her only regret as not having more time with Terry Nellie, saying that she wished that she would have kept him alive for a full week instead of just 3 days. And she's laughing the entire time. She's like, ha ha ha, yeah, I used a hammer, my favorite hammer actually. Yeah, I think I left a piece of him in there. Oh, that dumpster? Yeah, I think I threw a thigh in there. Maybe I actually threw a foot in there as well. What the? Afterwards, she also talked about how she rode his wheelchair for fun up and down the street. She's cracking up the entire time she's talking about this, by the way. In a later interview, she's laughing, smiling again. She says, quote, I heard they said I was possessed by the devil. I think that's hilarious. Isn't it beautiful, end quote. Angela Simpson was charged with first-degree murder, kidnapping, and abandonment or concealment of body, and she pleaded guilty, meaning that there was no trial. She entered the plea and faced sentencing. On April 3rd of 2012, Judge Paul McCurdy sentenced Angela Simpson to natural life in prison, plus an additional 14 years for the other charges. Natural life in prison in Arizona means exactly what it sounds like. She will never be released. There is no possibility of parole. In her statement at sentencing, the only thing that Angela Simpson said was that she felt as if she was wrongly convicted. She said that she felt that way because she believed that what she had done was justified. Edward McFarland was also charged with 2 felonies, abandonment or concealment of a body and hindering prosecution. He wasn't charged with anything else because according to Angela, she acted alone and he just helped her dispose of the body. He also pleaded guilty and was sentenced to 20 years in prison. To this day, Angela has no remorse, and she has said in every and any interview that she felt proud of what she did and that it would be a privilege to be able to do it again. She's like the exact kind of person that shows up in my nightmares. I don't know. I was thinking of this audio the other day and I was like, I wonder what the real story behind that is. I'm scared. Anyway, that is all from me today. Thank you for spending time with me today. I hope you guys are having the best day. If not, go do something to make it the best day. And I will see you guys in my next video. Massive kiss on the forehead to every single one of you.